Arguing for Ms. VanDerStok's is attorney Peter Patterson.
Mr. Chief Justice, and may it please the Court, this case turns on decisions made by Congress in the Gun Control Act of 1968. First, Congress altered the common understanding of firearm to include other weapons that may readily be converted to firearms. Second, in a departure from prior federal law, Congress decided to regulate only a single part of a firearm, the frame or receiver, and Congress did not alter the common understanding of a frame or receiver.
The common definition of a firearm is a weapon from which a shot is discharged by gunpowder, usually used as small arms. In other words, something you carry like a pistol, rifle, or shotgun. Congress, however, decided to expand that definition to what they call destructive devices. The term destructive device means any explosive, incendiary, or poison gas, bomb, grenade, rocket having a propellant charge of more than 4 ounces, missile having an explosive or incendiary charge of more than 1/4 ounce, mine, or device similar to any of the devices described in the preceding clauses. So Congress has basically redefined firearm into anything that goes boom. But notice, Congress didn't call them firearms. They redefined destructive devices as firearms. But according to Ms. VanDerStok's, there's more.
ATF has now exceeded its authority by operating outside of the bounds set by Congress. One, ATF has expanded the definition of frame or receiver to include items that may readily be converted to a frame or receiver. And two, ATF has expanded the definition of firearm to include collections of parts that are not weapons and that do not include a frame or receiver.
This is where the language gets tricky. You see, the law states that a firearm is a weapon that will or may be readily converted to express a projectile. The law also states that a frame or receiver of such a weapon is also a firearm, but the readily converted is applied to the weapon, not the frame or receiver, which is the serialized part of many of these weapons.
Some concern has been raised about circumvention, but of course complying with the statute is not circumventing it. And as this Court said in Abramski, which has already been referenced, Congress in the Gun Control Act did not seek to pursue its purposes of controlling access to firearms to the nth degree. And notably, Congress did not regulate the secondary market for firearms. And that secondary market is a much bigger source of firearms for criminals than privately made firearms.
Here, Mr. Patterson deals with some of General Prelogar's assertions. First, he asserts that companies were trying to circumvent the law by complying with its specific language. He also questions the assertion that these personally made firearms are a major source of weapons for crime.
There also has been questions raised about the agency's prior practice. There definitely has been a sea change by the agency here. The agency projected that its rule would put 42 out of 43 unlicensed manufacturers out of business. And what the agency said in the Syracuse litigation was they said an unfinished frame or receiver does not meet the statutory definition of firearm simply because it can be designed to or can readily be converted into a frame or receiver. That's the exact standard they've now adopted.
It seems quite obvious from ATF statements that their goal is to put these manufacturers out of business. Was that the goal ATF was given when it was created? As stated before, Mr. Patterson points to a previous case where the ATF stated that unfinished firearms or receivers do not meet the statutory definition of firearm. So who is trying to change the rules, Ms. VanDerStok's or the ATF?
Instead, what they looked at was whether critical machining operations had taken place. And to be clear, we have no quarrel with that prior practice. We have raised as alternatives, one, something has to be completely machined, or two, the critical machining operation test. And the latter we submit is more consistent with the statutory language and solves the machine gun problem. Because if you say in the machine gun provision, a frame or receiver is also regulated, and if one hole is all that separates a semi-automatic receiver from a machine gun receiver, it's hard to see how the readily standard would not also be applied there. I welcome the Court's questions.
Which brings us to the crux of this matter. What does the word readily mean? According to Merriam-Webster's Dictionary Online, readily means without much difficulty. Yet, as I understand it, these unfinished receivers are also known as 80% receivers, since only about 80% of the machining has been completed. How readily does that make them?